Hi, Lance. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. I have some, yeah, I cannot change my microphone settings.
Hello, hello. We'll give it a few minutes to see who shows up.
By the way, I tried to prepare something.
Oh, you're very, very quiet for me now.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but very quietly.
Yeah, very quiet.
Yeah, something wrong with my microphone. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, we'll give it another minute or two and see if anybody else shows up. Otherwise, we can get started, and it'll probably be pretty quick. I usually take this one from home, but I got into the office nice and early this morning, so that's good. I'm the only one here so far.
Had to get in for waffles.
No, Waffle Wednesday is every other Wednesday. If this was Waffle Wednesday, I wouldn't be here. I would be eating or making or both waffles. No, Jen had a very early orientation for her new job down in Santa Clara, so she had to be out the door at 6:30. And I woke up with her and didn't go back to sleep and thought I'll just go into the office. And I guess we can get started. We can all just collectively take notes, I guess. Yeah, so I think the big first thing to talk about is 329, which is coming up. Code freeze for that is in 2 days, actually, so September 13th. And so we'll freeze the code and cut new release branches for that in a couple days. Hey, Nathan. I think there's a number of things that are sort of down to the wire, trying to get in there. So, we'll see how those go, but expecting at least a few big things in 329. So one of the big ones is tiered policy support and admin network policy. Mazdak, you can probably talk a little bit to the latest state on that. I know the tier capability has been merged. I think the admin network policy piece on top of that is sort of the last piece to go in.
Yeah, that's correct. So the main activity that we try to add to the release is admin network policy and baseline admin network policy, for short, ANP and BAMP.
Mhm.
And these are the two new APIs that Kubernetes SIG network policy has introduced. The main thing, like, Keith, I don't know how detailed do you want me to go into the topic, or do you want me to just give a status about the development? So,
I think a quick summary of what it is and the status would be
okay,
perfect.
okay, sure. Yeah, so yeah, these are the two new APIs that we are going to support. So at the moment, for the coming release, we are planning to add support for admin network policy. Baseline admin network policy will be in the next release. So admin network policy, the majority of the changes are there. Hopefully, like, yeah, there is a good chance that gets into the release. So yeah, I mean, majority of the changes are there. There are, I think, what next I'm trying to do is to like check for conformance tests to see if they are passing or not. This is something I'm going to add today, basically, and then hopefully everything passes, and then we are happy. We'll see. But in the same topic, to like accommodate and like add this feature, we open source tiered policy to Calico open source. It's already in the master branch, so it's going to be in the next release. So yeah, that's basically the like short status.
Cool. And in the unlikely event that admin network policy doesn't come in 3.29, the tiered policy will still work and
Yes.
function.
Yeah. So tiered policy is already there. Everything is working. So yeah, it's like the tiered policy like is a generic way to organize policies. So in my opinion, it's more generic compared to admin network policy and baseline policy, and that gives it's basically more powerful tool. But this is like Calico specific feature. Yeah, it's working fine. Everything is passing. So yeah, the users will be able to use it from next release.
Nice. I saw there was a question on the admin network policy stuff about like default tier action. Is that still an open question on admin network policy, or have we figured out a path?
So yeah, like we raised that question from the beginning because the specification is not very clear. So just for the others, the question is that what happens like if rules in admin network policies are checked, there is no rule matching the endpoint or the traffic, what would happen? And then I have a diagram. I can show my screen. I can show my screen if that's okay.
Yeah, assuming
So
you've got permission.
yeah, I have it.
Cool.
So can you see my screen?
Yep.
So this is the diagram that we have for admin network policy and baseline. So the general idea is that in admin network policy, the users will be able to create policies. It's not namespace, and then the rules. In the rules, you can specify actions, specifically, I mean, very explicitly, and the actions can be allow, deny, and pass. And then the idea is that uh, if there is a rule with pass action, the execution or evaluation should go to normal Kubernetes network policy. And then again, if there is no matching network policy, the traffic should be checked again baseline. baseline admin network policy. But then the question for admin network policy is that what would happen if there is no matching AMP? So it's a bit vague because there are two cases. Either there is no rule matching the endpoint, and the other is that there is an endpoint matching, but there is no rule specifying what happens to traffic. So initially we raised this question, and then we got the answer that, okay, if there is no matching rule against the endpoint, then it should implicitly, there is an implicit pass action to a network policy. And this is exactly the way that Calico tiers work. So we said, okay, if this is the case, we don't need to add any new functionality to tiers. So this is the path we have been going so far. But yeah, Sean has been raised this question again, and apparently we got different answer this time. So I feel like it's a bit of uncertainty. It's not for me 100% clear what's the answer. So what I'm trying to do today is to run, like I said, conformance test to see if it's passing or not. If it passes, then it's basically proof that what we have as tiers uh, is aligned with the specification. Otherwise, we have to make a small adjustment to tiers, and we have if we need to change the behavior here, it's still like something we have capability in Felix. We just need to expose it from tier API perspective. So I don't think it's going to be a major development. But yeah, this part is still a bit like not fully clear for me.
Yep. Cool. Thank you for coming very prepared with diagrams.
I have been checking this diagram the last few weeks myself.
And this is still a data API upstream, right? Or
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
cool. So
And Casey, so this is clear. This is important to state that what we are going to support in the next release, if we get it, is only the core functionalities. So admin network policy and baseline, as you said, is not like it's in alpha version. And then there are like proposal to add new feature functionality like FQDN policies. But then most of them are experimental, so we are only going to add the stuff or the parts that are like finalized and added as support core.
cool, makes sense. Cool, thanks, Mazdak. Another big.
Maybe just
Yeah.
a question on the policies. Just making sure there is my understanding is there is no data plane change for those policies. It's only competition graph that will change, but from a data plane implementation standpoint, that should not change, right? Just trying to figure out whether we need to do some evolutions to support that in VVP.
So there will be data plane changes. I understand you're most likely asking from VPP standpoint if you need to make any changes or not. So we had to make changes to our data plane, like eBPF and IP tables. So the main difference is that one of the updates that data plane were used to receive was about the policy keys or policy information, and the policy information only included policy name. So based on the new changes, the policy information includes a name and a tier name. And by default, what happens is that the cluster get initialized with a default tier, and the default tier is there all the time. So in short, yeah, basically you need to make adjustment, but
it's
the
probably
changes
just
you
going to
need
be
to make. Sorry?
a bit of parsing to get the tier right, and a bit of mapping between tiers and this is ordering, I suppose. or on that? Okay, but I think yeah, I think we don't need to dive too much into that, but I'll probably bug you then on implementation. If you have a pointer to the changes in IP tables,
Yeah, sure.
that are
I don't know how VPP implements policies, but basically we had to update the policy, the part functionality about policy generation in data planes. So yeah,
yeah
we have
we have
implemented.
we have our own implementation of both control plane and data plane. So packet processing we implemented as well, so it's relatively easy to patch things. So
And the interaction between tiers is quite similar to the interaction between existing policies and profiles in terms of how it would be implemented. So there's probably like you've got precedent to work with there.
Yeah, and we have the implementation for eBPF IP tables. You can use it as a reference point. And I've worked on some part of the data plane implementation. I don't think it's major change. Like you just need to find a way to like generate end of tier sort of policy in data plane.
Okay, good to know. And side question to you, Lance, probably. Does CI support testing that?
Yes, it does.
Enable some. Okay, so we probably need to enable some tests to have them run, to include them, or
Yes, I will need to talk to Mazdak about whether or not we're going to relabel the tests so that the existing test selectors select it, or whether we're going to add more selectors. But yeah.
Okay, but they are testers, so it's worth trying to fill with selectors. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good point on the interactions. Mazdak, could you make sure to send that link to the example, the reference code to Nathan?
Oh, sorry for the
No worries.
the present.
So I don't know, how can I contact Nathan? Is there a
On
Slack
Slack
channel that?
On Slack there is VPP testing, or you can really guess me.
Yeah.
I'll make sure you get an invite, Mazdak.
Thank you, Lance. Sure. Yeah.
Next thing I wanted to call out for 329 is new work to make Calico capable of handling service load balancer IP allocations. So for a long time, we've had the ability to announce service load balancer IPs over BGP, but we have relied on other projects like MetalLB to perform the allocation. We sort of did this originally because existing projects existed and we didn't feel the need to sort of compete with those. But we've had quite a few requests over time from users who want just a single single solution to handle that. So keep an eye out for that. That one is one of the ones that's sort of teetering on the edge of making the code freeze. But I'm hopeful. I'm going to be spending a lot of time trying to help get that in. So I'd call it out. And then I also wanted to call out the native NF tables data plane code, which was also merged a little while back and will be in tech preview in 329. This is primarily to support compatibility with the new kube proxy NF tables mode, which I believe is beta now. And that work was done primarily because IP tables is no longer under active development and new distros are going to stop including it. So expecting sometime in the next year or two for new distros to start shipping with NF tables by default instead of IP tables. I think those were the main ones on my list. Did I miss anything? Eric, Nasdaq, Lance. Nope, Eric unmuted for a second, but
No, yeah. I
cool.
forgot. I didn't know if I should unmute to say no or not.
Yeah, so that's all I had for 329 updates. Nathan, did I know we talked about the your stuff. Do you have more you wanted to talk about on VPP integration?
Yeah, so on VPP side, most of the work that we've been trying to achieve, to been at recently was rebasing VPP. So catching back with the release that's I think scheduled to happen in the coming month, and targeting because there has been in GPDK new driver for AWS ENAs committed, so we're trying to leverage that as well. Not sure how far we'll be able to go with that, but that's the goal. And yeah, we should also work towards the policy. As I thought this one would be transparent, but we'll probably have to look for that as well. And aside from that, we are also taking part with with varying involvement, let's say, to the multi-net cap discussions. So we're still that's still active, and last time I checked, it has spread into multiple caps to try to address most of the items that are needed to have full multiple networks supporting Kubernetes. So we are still tracking that. Probably taking going to take a lot of time to land, but
yeah.
But that's still ongoing. So that's
Cool. Yeah, keep us up to date with that. Interesting to see where those go. I feel like that discussion has been ongoing upstream for a long time in many forms. But
I think the main takeaway now is that there hasn't been real pushback yet, and the SIG network more or less acknowledged the fact that this was good to have. So it's probably going to go somewhere. Not sure yet where, but yeah, things are going. And aside from that, probably a future Calico VP contributor.
yeah.
Sorry
Gotta
again.
start 'em young.
Yeah,
not at all.
And yeah, that's it on the Calico VP side.
Cool. Thanks, Nathan. Anything going on in the operator world, Eric?
I don't think so. Nothing. Nothing. A few bugs, I guess, but I don't. I think I've seen one issue around I think it's one of the more lockdown hosts where it had some libraries or something, an issue running on them or something, but I haven't dug into that, or like operator site faults on those hosts or
That's
something.
interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, not a whole lot.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything on my radar either. I think the last big thing relevant to this group was the IP pool controller change, which went in 328. I think we've had a couple confused users about that one, but nothing too major so far.
You added something to disable the IP pool controller config for that, right?
If you tell the controller not to manage IP pools, then it won't do anything. So if you specify an empty list of pools in the spec, it's not explicitly disabling the controller, but it's telling the controller you got nothing to do.
Thanks a lot, by the way, for that. That's
Oh,
that we heard that would be nice to have. So
oh, nice. Yeah, it was one of those wish list items from the like very beginning of us writing this code, and yeah, it just kept getting kicked down the road until it had to happen.
Casey, I don't think this is really operator. I honestly I can't remember what the operator does in relation to IP tables or NF tables. Like I know in Felix, I guess it had something where it tried to auto detect if it was using like IP tables legacy or the IP tables NF tables mode.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any changes related to the NF tables significant to the operator? I mean, there's the new like I think you added a new field to say to use that, but
Yeah, nothing really major there. Just a new data plane, Linux data plane mode option, and
we don't do any. I don't think we did it for IP tables or BPF, but we don't. The operator doesn't do any checks on those, right? It doesn't try to verify.
you mean like check that the host kernel
Yeah.
is the right version and has the right things installed?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Anything.
No.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess that's something we could have it do since it is always host networked.
Yeah, it
Well,
could, but like I don't know how valuable that is because it could be running on a host that has support, and there might be another host in the cluster that doesn't, and
yeah.
it's
Well,
always
I
just
mean,
going
if
to
it's
be an
well, yeah.
approximation.
I mean, unless they have hosts that only run host networked, they could at least check that whatever it's configured for is allowed on that host, right?
Yeah, it could.
Or will work on that host.
For most clusters, I think it's probably safe to say that if one host supports it, the rest will, but
yeah,
you might have mixed node types that
sure.
don't. So I just think it's probably not worth the effort and extra permissions it would take to do that.
Okay, just
but,
thinking.
if we get a bunch of complaints about it, then something to keep in mind.
Yep. All right, I'll stop talking now. I didn't come prepared.
All good. Doesn't mean you need to stop talking though. I am rarely prepared and I have to just keep talking. Well, speaking of stopping talking, that was the last thing I had on my list. So, were there any other topics that anybody wanted to talk about or something that I missed? Cool. 329 scheduled for some time in October. So we'll be freezing it and doing testing for the rest of the month. And the next one of these meetings will be October 9th. Oh, I guess I should call out, we're going to be at KubeCon in November. So come see us there. I'll be there. I have a talk with Dan Winship at Red Hat on NF tables stuff. He did a lot of the work upstream on the NF tables kube proxy. So we're just going to talk together about all things NF tables and Kubernetes. But we'll also have a booth. Tigera will have a booth. Are you going to be there, Nathan, in Salt Lake City?
No, I think
I don't blame you. It's a long way to go.
Yeah, we attended the one in Paris because it was
that
with
makes
power away but manageable.
Yeah.
But yeah, Salt Lake City is a bit far.
Cool. Well, with that, everybody have a good rest of their day. And I'll see you on the internet.
Thanks. Likewise. Enjoy your day.